as we were initially rolling out Brite, I was dumbfounded by a lot of the results. And like we had like a construction company go through, and it was like a 4th year in-force VB case with MetLife. And ultimately, I think we tripled the premium.
Wow.
And the MetLife rep like reached out to us and was like, I don't know what you did, but the results were crazy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Spencer Smith here, host of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Enjoy today's episode.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
By the way, I got to ask you about these socks. Like,
oh, dude, we got a box. I got a box of socks for you.
Those are Brite
These
socks.
are Brite socks too.
Dude, yeah. I'm surprised there's not a Brite logo on your shoes.
Do
you have some of those?
Yeah. So it's interesting. We have we've got the funniest swag, like origin story of all of it. Because as we were moonlighting, the 4 of us were like, man, this is like a ton of time. We weren't paying ourselves. We still had our day jobs. And we're like, man, like, what do we do to reward ourselves? Being in Utah, we have like 1 million kids and our wives, and like we're up to eyeballs in debt with mortgages and stuff, right? So it's like, if we pay ourselves any kind of money, how do you justify buying stuff for yourself as like a reward, right? It's like, oh no, I'm going to take that money and put it into the mortgage or pay off this or the credit card or whatever. So we're like, what do we all like? And I'm a huge sneakerhead. Like I love shoes. Yeah. And so we like sat down and I'm like, guys, I can't buy shoes. Like if I wanted to.
You can't bring yourself to buy them?
I can't bring myself to buy it. And I can't go to my wife and say, hey, look, I know I have like 8 pairs of Jordans, but can I just get 1 more pair? You know, it's like, yeah, no. So anyway, we were like, let's buy ourselves stuff that we can't justify spending on our own, right? But the business can buy them.
Okay.
So shoes was one of them, and we just bought ourselves shoes quarterly. And our wives immediately were like, boxes of shoes were just showing up, and we're like, no, it's for our employees. It's company swag stuff. And they're like, you don't need new shoes every 6 to 8 weeks. And so anyway, it like turned into like a company benefit.
That's cool.
And so like over time, we'd hire people and they'd be like, oh, well, what about the team shoes? And we're like, oh crap. Like, so we've been trying to like peel it back, but ultimately it's become this
once you kind of establish that precedent, it's kind of like, how do you reel that in, right?
Yeah.
Like people are expecting.
So now we do it. Now we've kind of done it to where, and we would do swag drops like all the time where we'd be like, okay, what's cool? Let's get some hats. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it was like constant. We were just constantly like trying to like get cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so now we do like 2 main drops a year, which we have our company on site next week where everybody around the country flies in and we hang out for a week. And we now do like a core team shoe.
Now, does it actually have a Brite logo on it though? That's cool. And do you do like this quarter is red or this quarter is blue? Do you pick, or do you always stay within like the Brite color palette or what?
There's a weird Brite palette where it changes constantly depending on like what we think is like kind of cool. Like we just threw in like this cool purple color, but ultimately the latest shoe that we give out to everybody next week, they're Jordan Low 1s. And we've got like Brite tags like sewn onto them and stuff. So like we've branded them.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
But they're
I know what you mean about swag, and I want to keep this in. So the podcast has already started, just so you know.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
But I know what you mean about swag. I went up to the Philadelphia home office for Pareto a couple weeks ago and got an opportunity to get one of our Pareto vests because like our co-founders are always wearing them. Yeah. There's kind of this thing like you're cool if you got the vest. As soon as I put it on, I'm like, I'm one of the team now. But it's like I've been wearing this thing and my wife's like, aren't you hot?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, no, it's cool. Like I want to wear it. But anyway, so I want to keep that part of I love this story about the swag, so I want to keep that in. So let's just kick off the podcast. I'm here with Landon Fielding, the COO and co-founder of Brite Benefits. What's up, man?
Not much.
I'm good to finally get you down here. I feel like we were talking about this maybe for 2 years. I don't know. It's been a minute.
The pleasure's all mine. I've heard amazing things. I just feel honored to be here. So
I'm glad to have you, man. I know you were talking about a previous podcast you did, which was a little rigid and stiff, and you had to sit like really like it's uncomfortably. So hopefully we can do the opposite of that and get you relaxed to tell your story, man. But before we go into your background, and then we'll obviously dig into what Brite does fully, why don't you really briefly describe what Brite Benefits is, man?
Yeah, Brite Benefits is a benefits education platform.
Okay.
So, when you look at understanding how your employee benefits work, right? If I work at a company, my company's giving me employee benefits, medical, dental, vision, life, disability, perk programs, all sorts of stuff like that. I think we can all resonate. The problem is that benefits are just super confusing.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
You never know what to pick or why or how or what they cost. And so we've set out to help people understand those benefits and make it simple for them.
Awesome. Well, I love that, man. So I don't think I've covered anything exactly like this before. And you'll tell me like kind of where the competitive landscape looks like later. But why don't we go backwards in time, Landon? We were talking about your affinity for shoes, which I actually share that same affinity. But let's hear your backstory, man. A little bit of your bio, like where'd you grow up, career, education, all that stuff.
Absolutely. I'm a Salt Lake City, Utah native, been in Utah my whole life. Lived away for a lot in my married years. I actually started my career in the insurance industry.
Did you? Okay.
Out in Portland, Oregon.
What were you doing at the time?
I was doing sales for an insurance carrier out there. That was my first kind of jump into the industry. And then I got recruited to go get some expertise down in Arizona at a stop loss underwriter.
Okay.
So
you were actually doing underwriting then.
Doing underwriting, got to learn the mechanics. We'll just say it was a great learning experience.
Okay.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And ultimately got recruited back to Utah as a benefits consultant.
Okay.
And so I was doing benefits consulting for companies, worked for a really large regional firm, and did that for the last 10 years.
Well, I'm curious. So Oregon down to Arizona and then back to Utah, like did each job require a move and you were just recruited by a recruiter? Like how did you start in the industry itself? Because we all accidentally get here for the most part. So how'd you get started?
There's a great saying, right? Okay. It's not that you chose to get into the industry. It's what you did wrong that you ended up in the industry.
That's the first time I heard that.
And, so anyway, no, I was intrigued by it. I actually am a child of the industry. I've got a lot of family that's in the business and stuff, and was always told growing up it's a great living. It's a great way to make a living.
Were you reluctant though? Like some people will be like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to follow in footsteps. So did you embrace it?
I mean, you always think that you're going to be a firefighter or an astronaut or like do something really cool in your life.
Yeah.
So when you hear insurance, you're just kind of like, yeah, that sounds
not that cool.
Not that cool, right? So you always drag your feet about it and stuff. Yeah. And ultimately being on the sales side, right? Any kind of sales is a lot of fun. It gets the blood going. It's exciting. Closing deals is a great feeling, right?
Yeah.
And so that was exciting. And ultimately being on the sales side, you learn a lot. But then the thing that was, I think, really intriguing to me was understanding how you get to that price point, right? Which is why I felt like that was a gap in my understanding of kind of how insurance worked. And I knew it'd be hard. I knew it wouldn't be a fun, exhilarating thing. And I knew it was a short window experience opportunity for me to kind of round out.
Well, I'll tell you, man, the underwriting, I never got into underwriting per se, but I was in finance department. I did rate analytics. I did a lot of like projection stuff for like claims and stuff, reporting for a brokerage. And then when I started selling stop loss, I would pony up to our underwriters because I'm like, I wanted to know everything. I felt like if I knew everything about, well, could you pull that lever over there? Could I convince you to that? That would be worthwhile so we could get to this price point or whatever I needed to do. I felt like if I could speak that language and understand how you position stop loss from the way it's underwritten, I could be an effective salesperson. And so I would say I share your sentiment about that. It's a crucial component of understanding how to go sell an insurance product as well. So then once you got back to the benefits world, how long were you a consultant, right, when you were doing your consulting work?
Yeah, right around 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And I came into the industry pretty young, pretty fiery. And I think I benefited, I went really aggressive after cases that I knew had some kind of old brokers there.
Okay.
I knew if I, could insert some new blood, if you will, into that into a lot of those companies. I could bring new cool innovations, drive some really, really cool strategies that hadn't been in the market, at that point. And ultimately that was kind of how I branded myself as a consultant in the market as, I am going to be the person who brings you the most innovative, cost-effective strategies. Like whatever you're trying to do, I'm going to know it, and you're going to hear it from me first.
What was kind of some of that stuff that you like to talk about, right? That you felt like the incumbent wasn't bringing to the table?
It was all around self-funding, stop loss. Like there was an ROI component, like a financial component that, you're sitting on fully insured deals. Okay, perfect. Well, there's money on the table in those aspects. But then there was a big intrigue for me too of, innovating with Ben admin systems and stuff, right? Like stuff that wasn't necessarily being talked about that could help innovate and drive strategy for the HR team. So some of it was benefits related. Other times it was HR efficiency related. But ultimately there was just, when I got into the benefit space, ACA had just come out, right? And like people were terrified how they were going to navigate that. And so that was kind of the emergence of like why Ben admins were important, streamlining all of those rate tables and stuff. Utah's a small market anyway. So a lot of smaller companies that were
was
really
it self-funding
concerned.
Friendly though? I mean, like was it?
Of course. And like there's great carriers in that market that had a lot of unique, even level funded, right, for small employers. And so it was really fun to kind of bring in those where you meet a company, you can actually bring a huge cost reduction to them that would free up cash to do other cool programs that they'd wanted to do.
It's not just about like, oh, I brought a new idea. It's like if you implemented this idea, like there's runway for you to save 20 or 30, 40% on your plan. And it's like, what? Like that's been out there this whole time. That was when I got introduced to the notion of self-funding that I couldn't turn away from it anymore. Like I knew right away I needed to go advocate for this as much as possible. But do you miss consulting, man?
Of course. Of course. Well, and it's interesting too, because a lot of what we do from a business perspective, right, is when we're partnering with brokers and we're selling our software to them, there's a really, really strategic play involved where, we position ourselves that we're going to help drive the broker's strategy. So a lot of times, depending on what that broker is trying to do, our tool becomes a perfect fit inside that ecosystem to say, hey, if you're trying to do this over here from an efficiency standpoint, here is how you would position our software with your clients to do it that way. Or, hey, are you trying to change the perception of your benefits inside this particular client? Perfect. Well, there's a strategy to do that. And ultimately, that consulting side, I feel like still really exists with the partnerships and the big picture
you collected decades of experience to understand what your buyer needs, right? I mean, like if you hadn't had that experience and been sitting in that position, Brite probably wouldn't have been a thing. So tell me about the origin story a little bit. Like, so when did this idea pop into your head and why? Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for three main reasons. Number one, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number two, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number three, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments. So it's actually funny. I was sitting in an open enrollment meeting at the back, right? I felt like I was too cool to do the meetings, right? I'd have my account managers, my client management teams do them, and I was sitting back there with the HR team who, I work with on a really, really close basis. And the gal leans over to me and she goes, you know what, Landon? I love everything about what you and your firm does. I love working with you. I love the analytics that you give us. Like, the ideas, all of this stuff is so great. She's like, you know what sucks? This. Yeah. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, this is the industry standard. This is what we do. We do the benefit guide. We do the PowerPoint presentation. We do the open enrollment meeting. Right? Like that is the core thing every broker across the country does. And I remember leaving that meeting and being like,
this is terrible.
Yeah.
And more importantly, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like you have this kind of delusional experience of like, no. If I can just check the right boxes, no one's looking at me, no one's analyzing me, no one's, I'm getting across the finish line. Maybe not as efficiently as I want, but I'm still doing what's being required of me. And
well, I would say our industry is notorious. It feels like it's always kind of been done this way, or this is the standard. I mean, like that's an obvious cliche, right? Like you attack that right away. It's always been done this way, but it's like our industry will do that for 20 years and get stuck in that rut when it's clear, like you said, it was suboptimal. Doesn't mean it didn't kind of work. It didn't check the box, but it was suboptimal to what could actually be accomplished. So was that really the planting of the seed, is when that one little whisper? Okay, so does she get any credit? Does this?
100%.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You'll send her a big check one day.
Hopefully. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But so from inception of idea to turning into Brite Benefits today, like talk to me some of those steps.
Yeah, great question. So we looked at it like literally from that stage, and I sat there and I was like, there has got to be something out here that works. And here's what I was looking for. I was looking for everything the benefit guide should do but doesn't, right? So I looked at it from how do you engage employees, right? And like what prevents an employee from actually being engaged in benefits, right? So that could be their lifestyle, that could be the company setup, right? Like examples, open enrollment meetings, right? Like you're pulling hundreds of people off of job sites. That's costing the employer like thousands of dollars, right? You look at like apps to download. You look at multi-sided companies, right, where it's impossible to get everybody together. You look at, Zoom meetings and stuff, right, where those can be effective, but people turn their cameras off and they're playing on their phones. Yeah. You take just the confusion of benefits in general, and it's like, I have 6 different plans to choose from. That's really, really confusing. I don't know what a deductible is. Maybe there's a language barrier, right? Okay, English isn't my native tongue. You've got acronyms like crazy. You've got, there's just so many problems just about how to simplify and make benefits understandable.
Absolutely.
And then it was like, okay, well, this medical carrier has this app, this vendor has this app, and there's 15 different apps to choose from. That's really confusing, right? And then ultimately at the end of the day, there's the Ben admin system, right? Which is like this big, heavy beast. It's just such a saturated market in general that every broker is managing, 60 clients with, 50 different Ben admin systems, right?
Yeah.
And so there's just so many different barriers that were like, this is really challenging.
Yeah.
And then we looked at it, we said like, okay, of all these things, there's got to be somebody that does benefits education like really, really well. And no one really hit the mark of where it was, right? Like my most frustrating thing about being a broker was cool technology would come out, which a lot of our competition, super cool technology. But ultimately it was either cost prohibitive, it was time prohibitive. And so most HR teams would look at it and be like, okay, this is a really cool solution, but I don't have budget.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't afford it. I can't pay for it. And then you'd look at things like, okay, well, it's been in place for X amount of time or whatever. We can't afford that cost going forward. And then the last part of it too is like from an efficiency standpoint, just took so long to set up. It was like, you got to get all this information and then hand it off to somebody who has never even spoken to my client before, never even knows them, right? So it's got to be broker centric. Anyway, there's just so many different things didn't exist.
Yeah, I was going to say, it speaks to the opportunity, but also speaks to why maybe somebody hasn't done this before as well, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there's a total fragmentation of software in the benefits world that there's a new one every week, right? And I came from one, right, that I still inherently believe in strongly, but it's brokers and consultants are inundated with, look at this shiny new object. I promise this is going to solve all the problems that you currently have, and it's cheap, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not reality, right? And there's just so much out there. There's so much noise that it's awesome that there's innovation. It's awesome that there's a lot of money being pumped in from private equity, but now it's overwhelming in terms of the noise itself. So did you know that software was the way to solve for it, though? Did you have a tech background? I'm curious where this came from.
Definitely a zero tech background. I would say I I am at my core an absolute nerd.
Okay. I was going to say that earlier, but
no. It's fine. I can take it. I can handle it. No, I can self-deprecate with the best of them. But
so how are you nerd though? In what way do you feel like
that's a great question? I've always been like, I love it. Like I love the the apps, the devices, like
kind of a tech geek.
Yeah, I'm a tech geek I would call myself a non-technical tech geek.
Okay,
right.
Fair enough.
Like I would figure out how to make like cool PowerPoint presentations that were like click through rather than just like page stuff. That's the extent of my cool stuff. So I actually loved prototyping. Like I used an app prototyping tool to create like marketing content. So I used the tool in a completely wrong way. But anyway, I just started prototyping like what I thought the experience could be like.
Okay.
And I started.
Was this just you on your own, or
yeah, this is totally on my own. And it's funny. I bring ideas to my wife like all the time. I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And she's like, "Yeah, cool. Great. Keep playing, Landon." And one day I brought her the idea, and I was like, "Look, here's what I think Brite should be." We didn't know what the name of Brite was at that point, but I was like, "Here's the concept of what I'm thinking." And she was like, "Honestly, Landon, you've brought me so many things through the years that I've just like laughed about and like whatever." She's like, "This has legs.
Yeah.
You have got to pursue this." And that was like the first realization for me where I was like, maybe I am onto something. I got to start putting a little bit more brain power to it.
Okay.
And
that's always the crux though, is like everybody has ideas.
Yeah.
But it's the execution, it's the follow through that most people lack.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe it's just they hadn't found the right idea yet. So your wife obviously helps. What is your wife's name? I want to give
Beth.
Beth. So Beth, give her some credit.
Oh yeah.
Pushed you in this direction. So when did it start really taking shape? PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
Yeah, great question. So I'm a ski bum at heart, being in Utah, right? I love skiing and snowboarding and stuff. I got invited on this really cool cat skiing backcountry, amazing skiing day. It snowed 2 feet the night before, like perfect conditions. Everything was optimal. And a really good friend of mine that I had met down in Arizona, a couple years before. And I was like, I have to invite prospects because I was a benefits consultant, right?
Yeah.
So the only thing I'm ever doing is trying to get that next group. So when he worked at this company, and I was like, you know what, I'll just invite him. He's a good buddy, and this will be my entryway into this guy. Mm-hmm. And I had a couple other prospects and clients with me. Didn't talk to him the entire time. We had 6 hours on this cat day, and he was a product manager at this company, and I just kind of approached it like an interview almost. I was picking his brain on everything, his experience, kind of what it's like, what does it take to build the software, and ultimately ended up pitching him the idea in a 10,000 foot high level way. And we were just conceptually talking about it, and I just had this overwhelming feeling like we got to do this. So I sent him a text later that night and I said, "Can you come over? I want to present something to you." And he's like, "Sure." I made him sign an NDA, walked him through the market opportunity, the program, kind of what we were thinking, and he's like, "I'm all in. I'm on board."
Well, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, and I think he was intrigued by it.
Was this Ben?
Yeah, this is Ben.
Okay, yeah.
He was my business partner, and it was interesting. He's a cancer survivor, and so he doesn't come from the industry. However, he's seen the industry firsthand and kind of his whole process. So I think it really resonated with him, and ultimately, I think everybody, right? Like we've all felt that pain point of like, man, these are just like overly confusing.
Well, I can think of about 5 people at the top of my head that have sat on this couch who started companies because of their first or the worst interactions with our healthcare system, right? So that just speaks to the problems that exist within the industry, man.
Yep. Yeah. So then after that, we kind of sat down and we said, okay, there's definitely legs behind this. Let's formulate the company, created the business structure. And then ultimately we looked at it and said, what are the 2 most important people that could be a part of this that we need in order to make it successful? And it's like, okay, well, we're creating software. We need 2 technical co-founders.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Jake Parkinson, who's our front-end engineer, and Colton, who's our back-end engineer, Colton Shields, unbelievably talented guys. That was the 4 founding crew.
That's awesome.
So
early days, you said you were moonlighting though, right? You were still a consultant at the time. So, describe to me kind of the early days of what it was like, the hours, when you were working on it, that sort of thing.
So it was crazy because early on, so once the 4 of us were kind of all together, we all had our day jobs. We would get together probably 2-3 times a week, maybe a little bit less. We would go through prototypes, apps, all sorts of stuff. And I was sending them like, hey, here's what we should build. And we put together a pretty sweet, like early beta product that was just, I look at it now and I'm like, I can't believe we showed people this. But those initial clients of mine that were like, Landon, I hate how you do education, they were the first people to actually buy the software.
Yeah.
And so we had paying customers like right out the gates that were like, they felt how bad the problem was and the need was, and ultimately drove a lot of the early day success.
Well, if somebody's willing to pay for it, a lot of times business will get started because it's like somebody even says, hey, you do that, I'll pay you to do that. Like, it's like, oh wait, that's a business. So clearly, like even in its beta form, people were willing to pay for that software. That's got to reinforce that. Oh, we're on
it's awesome,
right?
Yeah.
So how long did you moonlight before Y Combinator came into the?
Yeah, great question. We moonlit it for about, let's call it 8-ish months.
Yeah.
Really, where we basically had one renewal cycle, where we got through. We got to get people go through it through open enrollment, and then ultimately, it was interesting. We were staring down the barrel of COVID, right, which freed a lot of opportunity for us to actually work on it a little bit more than our actual day jobs.
Okay.
So we did that. We got through that renewal cycle, and then ultimately, in the spring of 2021, we were looking at success and like talking to the customers, and we had this kind of pivotal. Are we going to take this to the next level? Are we going to really do this? Like, if we're doing this, we're quitting our jobs.
Yeah, you have to go on, right?
And if anyone who's been a broker for 10 years, you're like, I'm sorry, guys, like, that's really tough to give up that broker comp.
Yeah.
So anyway, we looked at it and we're like, okay, well, if we're going to scale this thing, we got to do it right. And if we really think that we've got the opportunity that we think we have, Y Combinator is, it's the largest VC accelerator program in the world.
Yeah.
So we looked at that and said, well, shot in the dark, let's apply. And Ben drove a ton of that initial opportunity for us. I had no clue who Y Combinator was. I had 2 clients in Utah that were Y Combinator companies. Outside of that, I didn't realize how prestigious that program actually was. So it was crazy. I was at a spring sing watching my 2-year-old sing, or 4-year-old singing in a program, and I get the text that we got accepted.
That's awesome.
And I was like, no way, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there for like 45 minutes and not make a peep. It's like, oh, great kid. I don't care. I'm on this. Look at me. But anyway, so we went the venture capital route. We raised this really, really small initial round of funding.
Yeah.
And that was the jump off point for the 3 guys to go full time.
That's awesome.
So I wasn't able to go full time quite yet. I still had to transition out of my book of business, and that's a story for another day.
Yeah, story for another day. But so let's go into the modern day, present day, Brite Benefits. So I want to get a little bit deep into the solution now itself. Like, who does it work for? How does it work? Why does it work? What's your target audience? Things like that. So now in the present form, kind of reinforce what Brite is, and let's start going down that path. Yeah.
Brite is everything a benefit guide should do but doesn't.
Okay.
Right? So you cringe when you hear a benefit guide. Oh, it's a terrible experience for everybody. We looked at it and said, okay, well, let's create a digital experience that allows you to do a couple of things. The first one is, how do you get Brite into the hands of everybody? Right? So we've created a really simple way to distribute education through texting, Slack, Teams, whatever it may be, whatever the current company uses to communicate, we work right inside that ecosystem.
Okay.
From there, you click on a magic link. We call them the magic URLs. Anywhere you have an internet connection, you can engage in Brite. You click on it, launches the experience, right? So no apps to download, no user information, any of that stuff, right? Zero barriers. From there, it will give you a 10,000-foot overview of all the benefits you've got access to. We've got embedded decision tools in there. So you answer a couple questions and it'll recommend every single benefit you should consider enrolling in and why.
Okay.
And then from there, it will pair the education to those recommendations. So not only are you getting a recommendation, but we're now pairing that broker education about each of those products in one experience. And then ultimately they learn as much as they want to. And there's a handoff point where we then push them to any Ben admin system on the market to go enroll.
Okay. Well, so I guess the recognition of the problem itself, right, is a broker works with an employer to come up with strategy. Here are the plans we think are most effective for your company.
Yeah.
But then that company says, all right, I'm going to go open enrollment. I'm going to present the new benefits we've selected. We think they're great. We know our people are going to love them. But after that open enrollment conversation, that may be the last time, the one and only time those things are ever brought up. So I'm looking at it from the lens of a member, a person that doesn't interface with the healthcare system much. Then I'm getting voluntary benefits offered to me. I'm getting life and disability offered to me. And I'm like, I don't know what to select, right?
Yeah.
So you were solving for one, the single, very, terrible communication of it, if you would. And then two, sort of helping somebody, guiding somebody through ultimately what they should select for their specific use case, right? Is that a decent way to sum?
Okay. Absolutely.
So how do you solve for that then? So if I'm educating a member, like what am I presenting to them? What information do you need from me in order to make those recommendations? How does that whole process work?
Great question. The broker's crucial in all of this, right? Because they're the consultant. They're the ones who are administrating all of those plans, for their clients, right? And so we take the broker's sold spreadsheet, we upload it into our software, and ultimately our tool reads all of that information, builds all the education around those products, and then ultimately creates it in an environment where the HR team can easily take that and give it to any employee, not just for open enrollment. Obviously, that's the main beast of education for that cycle, but ultimately with a couple clicks of a button, it works for any new hire coming through as well. So they can get that same open enrollment experience the moment they join the company. And then throughout the rest of the year, we've got amazing templates and libraries of carrier content and stuff where we now say, okay, here's 10,000-foot overview of this telemedicine program or this disease management program, whatever it may be. Well, now in January or February or March, whenever stuff is closed, hey, here's everything you need to know about this specific program and how to maximize it.
So there's ongoing communication that happens, right? Because I think that is really important, right? The reminder of this benefit is out there. Because if I 7 months into a plan year forget that I have telehealth, that's not really very useful, right? So the continual communication becomes really, really effective. So is that text-based communication? Is that email?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we work in the ecosystem of how the broker wants to engage with their client, right? So we're not going to step on toes. We become a bolt-on solution to whatever the consultant is trying to do. So when I put my broker hat back on, right? Some clients, they want monthly engagement, right? They want monthly monthly conversation happening. Some maybe want it quarterly, some maybe want it twice a year, right? So we're going to fit inside kind of that ecosystem to drive what the broker is trying to do with their clients and let them set that pace.
Yeah.
But ultimately our software enables that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's so crucial, man, because people just forget. And I even forget sometimes what benefits I have. And like you said, there's also, they go over coffee, we were talking about, the member might be me enrolling, and then the information doesn't really get out to my wife very effectively because I forget to tell her stuff, or she has to come back to me and say, hey, will you log into the portal and tell me what our dental coverage is or whatever, because I've forgotten, right? So there's miscommunication all around. So how do you solve for that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, ultimately what we've looked at is said, how do we get the spouse involved, right? Like, I'm from Utah, so we're good at having more kids than we probably should. And my wife is the benefits expert at home, right? Yeah. Which, let's be honest, like, I don't think any of our spouses would feel very comfortable about navigating healthcare. Yeah. And so, I asked you the question, when was the last time you took your kids to the doctor? No, never, right? But like, you are the industry expert in your home. And so our spouses are the ones that are kind of left on an island by themselves, where they don't get to go to the open enrollment meetings, right? That's few and far between that they get any information. So we've built the platform in a way where we highly promote shareability inside the tool, to where you click on a Brite magic link, you're reading about education, the system's going to prompt you to say, hey, who do you need to share this with?
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
Send it to your spouse, send it to your partner, whoever it may be. We're trying to get them the information in a way where they don't have to log in as well.
That's smart. Right? That's really, really good, man, because I don't even know. I'd have to go find what my portal is to log in, let alone know what my benefits are. I'm terrible at that, man. But I think what this comes down to is there's a lot of great solutions out there, and really probably useful solutions for these employees, but participation tends to be lacking, right? So aren't you guys kind of helping solve for this low participation on benefits?
Absolutely. We've got some amazing partners on the carrier side of things, right? So you look at voluntary participation, right? You get pretty good engagement, and like, brokers do a great job, with a heavy lift and things like that to really promote, accident policies and stuff. We live in the benefits world now where, high deductible health plans are driving a ton of cost containment strategies, and ultimately that exposes a lot of risk on employees. So filling those holes with VB products is important. Ultimately, the delivery of that strategy can be really, really hard, right? You look at an open enrollment meeting, and then you go into the Ben Admin system, where it's a big, heavy list of, here's all the products and here's how expensive they are, with no education behind it, or really no easy button to say, hey, what should I pick and what should I pair things with, can be confusing. So we drive amazing participation increases in voluntary products, especially when it's administered right in the software. Any decision support tools are going to drive better participation and engagement, but we definitely hang our hats on being able to drive high voluntary participation.
Yeah, is that where it started, actually? Did you guys start it focusing on VB?
It's interesting, yes. Okay. The whole focus, like on my end, right, like as we were initially rolling out Brite, I was dumbfounded by a lot of the results. And it was actually pretty interesting. We had a lot of carriers that reached back out to us after initial open enrollment would close. And like, we had like a construction company go through, and it was like a 4th year in-force VB case with MetLife, and like dismal participation year over year, right? So we knew that the level was pretty consistent, and ultimately I think we tripled the premium. Wow. And the MetLife rep like reached out to us and was like, I don't know what you did, but the results were crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought you were going to replace us and swap carriers this year. Like, I can't believe where participation came. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. That was because we used Brite on this. And so, I mean, we had a bunch of those cases kind of happen. And ultimately, the thing that is funny is it shifted. It went from being like hey, here's how we're going to drive VB strategy, to there's a massive efficiency play as part of the tool that we didn't even realize until we started getting more broker feedback of,
Or are y'all replacing open enrollment a lot of times now, or just simply augmenting?
I think we're definitely not reinventing the wheel. Okay. We're just making it spin a whole lot faster.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
So we've gone from a lot of brokers doing like the hour-long open enrollment meeting to 15-minute high-level, hey guys, open enrollment's kicking off. Let's give you a 10,000-foot overview of what's changing and then how to navigate this tool.
Yeah.
And then if you have questions, we're going to do a Q&A meeting like 4 days from now to answer the specific nitty-gritty questions. Like every broker can resonate. Like you're in an open enrollment meeting and that one person that always has a question is like, hey, I have end-stage renal failure, everybody in the company. What, tell me about what I should do. And it's like, everyone's like, please, like, not the right time, not the place, but it happens in every meeting.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think a lot of brokers and account managers, client managers have seen this and said, oh yeah, let's streamline these meetings, make them a little bit more efficient. We have broker partners that have completely ditched the old school open enrollment meeting.
Yeah,
they don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my perspective too, like just having a little guidance. I mean, even for me, I could be swayed to purchase an accident policy. I just have never really valued it enough to like, even though they're relatively inexpensive for the most part, right? It's like, I've just never been compelled to click.
Yeah.
But with a little bit of like, say, hey, here's why it might work and here's why you should consider it and here's what it's for. And hey, it's $12 a paycheck. Why not? I could personally be swayed. So I could see where if you could do it in a way that felt neutral, right? It didn't feel like I had a rep sitting across the table pushing a product on me because I knew they were going to get commission. And ultimately, I think that segment of the industry has had that legacy reputation of being
for sure.
bad at, right? So now you have, my company has presented these benefits, and now I have just this objective tool making recommendations based on the information I put in. I would go, oh, okay, yeah, I could see that. And I might be like, and all you need them to do is click, right?
Yeah.
That's really as simple as it is. But I could see where this is effective, and it makes sense to why this is working to me. So what products in your suite will fit? So if I'm a consultant listening to this right now, is it every benefit line theoretically that I'm putting in motion?
So I love this topic because I'm clearly drinking my own Kool-Aid.
Okay.
We build our software catered specifically to the broker's book of business, right? So our smallest client's 2 employees, our largest is like 156,000, right? Which at the end of the day, benefits education is benefits education, right? It's the same process whether you're 2 or that many employees. Ultimately, sorry, I just had a total train loss.
No, I was saying like, does it apply to any benefit?
Yes, okay, that's where I was going. So when we look at that, you have broker's book as a business that you have a handful of jumbo cases, and then you ultimately have a bunch of small ones that kind of fill in the gaps, right? And ultimately, Brite fits really, really well in that ecosystem where we have really cool integrations for ACA plans. So we're click a button, you import all of those standardized plans with all those rate sheets and everything. You don't have to touch them. And so you can provide a superior benefits experience for 10 life group, right? More importantly, our decision tools and the way that it's built from an education standpoint, we can handle the most robust, RBP style programs as well. So anything that benefit package is set up to handle, we're fitting in that ecosystem.
Okay.
We are meant to really help promote and drive that broker's education strategy and just benefit strategy in general, right? You take a look at, how to get Medicare eligible people like off the plan, right? Like we have tools in there to kind of help promote that from a recommendation standpoint. So whatever the broker and their client is trying to do from a benefits strategy perspective, Brite can really drive the delivery of that.
It sounds really, really cool, man. And I'm not surprised why this is proliferating. I think you shared some numbers with me, and it's very, very impressive how fast you guys have grown. But where do you feel like you're continuing to evolve? Because you don't just build a piece of software and stop. So are there other things that you're looking at right now?
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Right now,
the roadmap is massive, right? Like obviously education was a pain point for mine, throwing my broker hat back on, but what's really, really exciting about what we're building at Brite is we feel like we really understand the life cycle of the broker and the client manager.
Okay.
And so a lot of what Brite's mission is to really empower brokers and their HR teams, and really put the tools and resources in their hands to drive that strategy. So that's not just open enrollment benefit strategy, but that's surveys and like getting feedback from employees and like really evolving that to where we feel like Brite is a tool belt for brokers, and ultimately that education component is just one of the tools in that tool belt.
Think about like how as a broker I could be educated now of like, what is the survey telling me employees are wanting? What are we missing, right? Like there may be solutions out there that I have a suite of solutions I typically bring to a group, but this particular group wants some help around, maternity management or something like that. And so getting that feedback reinforces the broker, which will be brought to the table next year. You find the solution providers that can do that, feed it back through Brite, get the enrollment, and now you've closed the loop for the following.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what we're tackling.
Tell me if you need some consulting. I'll be around for that.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So what have we not? We've answered kind of the group sizes.
Yeah.
We talked about it's mostly obviously a broker education or broker tool for education for their employers. Talk to me more about application. I mean, group size doesn't seem to be a limiting factor. Fully insured, level funded, self funded doesn't seem to be a limiting factor. Is there any products or solutions that don't really fit yet into what you do?
So to talk about the flexibility of the tool, I think that's the thing that like makes me the happiest, and like it's really fun. So I back at home I got 4 boys, and lacrosse is big in our family, which I have to say I don't know anything about lacrosse. I didn't play it growing up. It's become a core passion of mine. Anyway, long story short, our tool, I actually use it. So I coach one of my boys' teams, and we use Brite to educate the parents on here's the roster, here's the team schedule, here's the addresses to where all the games are. Here are the tutorial videos you need to help the kids practice at home.
Holy cow.
Here's all the links you need for gear, helpful tricks and tips about just how to navigate the rules of lacrosse and things like that. So anything you want to educate on, whether it's benefits.
So that you actually have applied it outside of the benefits world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is this just something you did for like personal use, or are you actually thinking there's like a business use case for
There's
this?
definitely a business case for it, right? Like there's so many applications for it. My wife uses it to display her pricing for the business that she kind of runs and stuff.
Well, we'll talk afterwards if there's an application for self-funded with Spencer.
There we go.
Figure out
where
to insert that. But so back on track, and let's kind of finish and land the plane here in the episode. Let's zoom out, right? Because you have a very unique perspective, Landon, in that you've been in the industry kind of a similar time frame that I have, over 10 plus years or more. You've seen the underwriting side, you've been on the sales side as a carrier, been a consultant, and now obviously you're building, insure tech. What do you think our industry is moving towards? Like I usually ask this sometimes for consultants of like, where's healthcare going? But your perspective is a little broader than just healthcare at large. So where do you think our industry, this insurance industry, is going, man? The
thing that's exciting to me about the industry is there's so much innovation that's happening, right? And I think that this will be more of a plug for why Brite is applicable to all the brokers out there listening. But ultimately, everything has this incredible ROI. Right? Like every program out there has so much impact that could be made, right? Like we've got a great partner, Cost Plus Drugs, Mark Cuban's, one of his investments. And like what they're doing just on their drug side of things, like that's so cool. And ultimately every single vendor out there has this amazing ROI that's driving engagement strategy, cost savings, all sorts of stuff like that. And I think where the industry is going is that transparency side of things. Okay. Huge transparency opportunities. And ultimately, the trickle down back to the HR team, who is the plan administrator for all of this, they're the ones really left in the dark. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are under budgeted, undervalued. Every HR team, it's one HR person for, 5,000 people. It's crazy the numbers of like how small those teams actually are. And they manage millions of dollars. But when it comes to actually using tools for themselves, that budget is pretty scarce. Okay. So ultimately, I think the consultants really they're always going to be around. I don't think there's ever a day where the consultant is not a part of the picture.
Yep.
If there is proof behind that, ACA was a perfect example of why the broker is never going away. And so because of that, I think empowering the brokers now with tools and resources to drive those ROIs is really where the transparency is going to meet the efficiency, the effectiveness of those programs.
Well, I hear efficiency, right? Time savings as well as efficiency in like the product placement itself, the procurement side. Obviously there's time savings for HR. There's effectiveness of communication with the employees. Ultimately, if there's an uptick in enrollment, the carrier is going to be happy because there's more premium. Consultant might be happy because there's more compensation, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't really push that. It wasn't biased to force that. It just simply was a natural byproduct of Brite being effective. So it feels like it's a win-win-win-win. Yeah. I don't know how many people are in that one, but how many wins?
There's four wins in there. There's definitely 4 wins in there.
So closing thoughts though, folks that have listened to this, we've talked everything from swag to consulting to Brite and everything in between. Like, what would you want to leave the audience with, man?
Oh my gosh. It's just, Brite for the win.
Brite for the win.
Brite for the win.
I appreciate it, man. No, this is fun, and we didn't get to weave in any talking about working out and getting jacked. We'll do that for round 2, man. But I appreciate you joining me, man. Thanks for wearing black pants too. I think we're coordinated.
Well, thanks for dressing down, even though you still look 10 times better than me.
You told me, you're like, hey, I'm not coming in a blazer. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll meet you halfway. So anyways, this has been a lot of fun. I know you got another podcast to get to afterwards. So shout out to Dan, Ovation Health. You're going to go on his show as well. I hope you enjoy it, man. But good to see you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the travel.
Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, man.
Yep.